Now, hopefully you already know how to create basic animation. To add a bit more complexity, we can adjust our keyframe even more. So for example, we want to have this animation from start, and here on 1 second we will go up like this. And if we will press 0 numpad, we can see that it's pretty linear motion and it doesn't really look that much exciting. We can select any of our keyframes and click on this graph editor. And make sure that you go into this list and change to edit speed graph. Just click on it. And in this way, we will be able to change the speed between these keyframes and add a bit more character to it. If you cannot see a keyframe here, you need to select your position. You will see both of your keyframes. Just select this second one. And you will see this little handle beside this square. So let's click on this handle and drag to the left. Click and hold and drag to the left. And drag it down to this baseline. So we would have this kind of shape. What this graph tells us? It tells us that we have a really fast motion at the start with this spike, and then it goes slower at the end. So now if I'm gonna press 0 numpad, you can see that we have exactly that. Really fast motion at the start and really slow at the end, which looks a lot more interesting than before. So if I'm gonna press Ctrl Z to undo this motion, you can see that before it was really boring. And if I'm gonna press Ctrl Shift Z to redo this motion, it gives more interesting kind of look. This is basically the first movement which I've added in this animation. So now let's try to add another motion which goes in a circle like this. So for this I've created another keyframe here below. And as you remember from previous videos, when you're creating new motion, it creates this kind of bezier. If you don't want this kind of bezier, you would want to go to keyframe interpolation and change it to the linear. But in our case, we want to have this kind of ellipse motion, which is not linear. So this is where we can select our keyframe and we will get this kind of shape. And this is how we can exactly manipulate to the way which we want this motion to be. So for this ellipse motion, we are going to use this handle. And the easier way to create this ellipse motion is to go just down like this. And then by clicking on this handle, drag it to the left. And if we will zoom in into our video, you'll see that this point also have this kind of handle. And we can also drag it to the left like this. And it's a good idea to have these handles same kind of scale. Because if we will set this to smaller scale, you'll get this kind of shape, which is not that symmetric. So let's go with the same kind of distance and maybe move it lower. So we would have some space here for our animation text. And now you can see that we have this animation which goes up, then round shape like this, and we will add this closing shape a bit later. But first I want to change this kind of curved motion. And what we want to do is to select all of these keyframes and then select this handle. If you will hold Alt key on keyboard, as you can see I'm holding Alt, and by clicking on this handle, you'll be able to change only this part of this path. And if you will release Alt key, you'll see that we are changing both of these handles. And this is not what we want. So in case if you already change it like this, just release it and press Ctrl Z to undo. And then once again hold Alt key and change it so it would have this kind of straight line up. So let's finish our animation and move it this to exactly this point here. And by the way, if you want to move it to exact point as it was, you can not just move it manually, you can just delete this point and just select this keyframe, which is exactly this point at the top. I found it here. I can just copy this keyframe and then go here and press Ctrl V to paste. So in this case, I know for sure that it will come to the same place. because I've copied exactly the same position. And now what we want to do, once again, we can just select all of these keyframes to see all of these handles and adjust this handle once again. Just drag it to the right, about the same kind of amount as here, and also zoom in here to be able to find this handle. We can just move this one out of the way and then select this one and move it to the right like this, and then set this handle back what it was. Then zoom out by using wheel on the mouse. And if you will hold spacebar on keyboard, it will change to this cursor, which allows us to move this around. So hold spacebar and then left mouse click to move around your image. And then just click on this handle and move it to the right to about same amount as here below. And finally, we would want to change this position to the center as it was. So to set it to the center, we can just click on this time cursor and scroll it to the beginning and find this keyframe, which is exactly at the center. Select it and press Ctrl-C to copy. And about here, we can just press Ctrl-V to paste. So now if we are going to press 0 on numpad, we will see all the animation. As you can see, all animation is set, except this final motion. We can select this final keyframe, and we need to adjust this final kind of motion, which went a little bit crazy. So I believe this is this handle. We can just click on it and adjust it like this. Just don't be afraid to select any of these handles and change it, because you can always press Ctrl-Z to undo some action. So this is really handy, and you don't have to be afraid to do something wrong, because you can always go to Edit Undo, which is Ctrl-Z. So let's try to change this handle and also align with this path. In this way, this last motion will be also straight down. So now as you remember, this motion is correct, but the timing is a bit off. So let's press 0 on numpad to see better what is going on. So this first motion looks really good, and this motion of the going around is a bit trickier, because we want it to go slower at the start, then here fast, and here slower at the end. So to see this motion in the graph, we can select this position, go to Graph Editor, and see this kind of motion. As you can see, it's a bit messed up. We want to see this spike at the beginning, because we have this really fast motion at the start. Then this slow down motion is really good. But now we can see that we have some constant movement. We want to have a slower start, like it's gaining the speed. Then here, fast motion, as it already set it here, and slower movement at the end. So let's change this keyframe. We want to click on this little handle right beside the square and drag it to the right and down. So now as you can see, we already have this slower start, which is exactly what we want. But we have here two spikes, which can mess up the animation, and slower movement at the end, which exactly what we want. So let's see how it looks. I want to see only this part just before this last motion. So I can just click here on the work area and cut it to this motion to be able to check only this part of animation. So let's press 0 to see if all works fine. So as you can see, it almost looks good. But with these two spikes, we can clearly feel that it has maximum speed here, then it stopped for a moment here, then already gained some speed, and have this really nice animation at the end. So let's press 0 on numpad to see it one more time. And now our goal is not to have this kind of hiccup in this point. And to eliminate this problem, we want to change this handle. We can also click here to zoom in to see it better. And we want to have this as a one spike of speed. So just by clicking on this handle and dragging to the right, and here by clicking on this handle and dragging to the left, you can see that we kind of blend in this spike. So by changing these two handles, we want to have this seamless one spike. And in this way, if we will press 0 on numpad, we will have this really good motion without any stopping motion here in the middle, which is exactly what we want. So now we fixed this problem, and now you can see that even our graph looks smoother. And also we want to repeat this with this final movement at the end. So we have this slow movement, we want to start with a bit slower movement. So we would have these kind of nice waves. Slower movement here at the end also. So let's press 0 on numpad to see it. So basically, if your graph looks like this, you can already tell that you have pretty smooth animation, because your graph shouldn't really have corners. For smooth animation, you always need to check your graph editor, and you should check if it goes really smooth like this. And in this way, as you can see, we get this really nice motion. Okay, so we've created our first smooth animation. And by the way, if your timing has a bit of issues, just make sure that you have a right spacing between these keyframes. Just exit your graph editor and make sure that you have kind of similar timing. So in the next video, we are going to add a bit of character to this circle, so we would clearly see where it's about to go. It will be a light introduction to the 3D kind of animation. See you in the next video.